Talking Horses podcast. By the people, for the people, the weekly podcast that brings you reviews and previews of all the big racing weekends, as well as attempting to look behind the curtain of the sport with a view to increasing understanding, accessibility and ultimately enjoyment for all. Ben and Bruno back with you again, but as you can see, well, firstly, we're together in the flesh, which is the first time we can say that.
That's true, that's very true. Yeah, how exciting is that?
Very exciting. But you can also see we are in a pretty special location, which we will reveal shortly, with two very special guests who we will be introducing momentarily. But firstly, Bruno, where are we?
We are up at Manor House stables, just south of Chester, and we alluded to it a bit in the last episode, didn't we, at the end, gave a little teaser as to what was going to be happening. So the podcast is evolving for the good, of course. That's not to say we're stepping away from some of the existing stuff. So Deep Ground, 3 Out, those segments that you know and love so well are going to carry on. And we'll be doing that on a weekly basis. But we're going to layer in more content, more access to this fantastic location and the whole world of syndicate ownership of horse races, of racehorses, apologies, which is what we're here to talk about today. So, again, there'll be more episodes happening. On a weekly basis, we'll be doing the Deep Ground episode. On a potentially a bi-weekly or more regular basis, we'll be getting access and interviews going on, which is what we're here to do today up at Manor House. So, back to yourself to talk about what this episode looks like and who we're actually talking to today.
Good man. So, we are here this morning with the founders of leading horse racing syndicate in the Northwest, Roudee Racing.
Started well.
So we've got Mike and Dylan, whose brainchild Roudee Racing was. I guess it was sort of towards the back end of 2020 when you first had the idea over a dinner in a pub, I think, something like that. Is that how you remember it?
It was, I think we went out for, I think it was August 2020.
It was.
We went out with our...
We could get out with lockdown. We were allowed out for about a week. It was lockdown.
I think we went into Heswell, didn't we, for a bit of dinner with Faye and Michelle. Yeah. And it was an idea and a concept that I had for a while, through getting into ownership really, and going through the journey of starting off in syndicates and then moving forward to sort of owning on my own, and realising really that wasn't a great experience. I mean, there was a little bit of injury in there for one of the horses during that, but the whole coming to the stables, meeting up with fellow sort of syndicate owners was a great experience. So I was looking to buy in again in 2020, and I was thinking if I could sort of start a syndicate and get other people involved, and maybe get a few horses, maybe on a quarter of each myself, and then get some other people involved. So that was virtually the discussion at dinner, wasn't it?
It was.
Dylan was keen to get back involved as well, and really itching to get back involved, and then we sort of came up with a concept, well, you know, sits perfect with Dylan and his sales and his background, and sort of, you know, we thought it would be a perfect fit.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Well, it got even better after we'd had about 10 pints.
Oh yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And by then we were leading the world, which we hope to do. But no, it was progressed over that, and we had some experience previously as owners. So yeah, that's exciting.
Nice. Best thing to come out of COVID so far, I think we can say that with some confidence.
Absolutely.
So over the course of this episode, we are going to go through we're not going to have Deep Grounds this week, given that we're going to take that time talking to Dylan and Mike, but we're certainly going to look ahead to this weekend's racing later on in the show. But really, so you guys have sort of already touched on that sort of early discussion about setting it up. So we wanted to sort of go right back to the beginning with both of you and kind of understand, you know, it could have been keeping with what Talking Horses is about, you know, where the love of the sport came from originally and how that sort of developed over time. So I suppose, sort of alluded to it briefly at the start, Mike, how did you get into racing? What was the sort of first experience?
I think probably similar to a lot of people coming from this area, we've got a couple of great tracks in Chester and Haydock, and pretty much as you're growing up, as you get to sort of later teens, and so, you know, sort of you'll go to Chester and sort of follow the racing at Chester. So that was sort of my sort of first experiences of being on the track and seeing racing in the flesh, which was just fantastic. And I never forget following a horse very early at Chester, a horse called Ted Borough, which my dad had said to me, I'm going to races, this is a course specialist, as the, you know, we all know many course specialists at Chester, but he's a course specialist, Ted Borough, so I've gone there, all the lads are there, you know, and I've given my dad's tip out, and that it's mine, you know, and I think it won twice on the bounce, in quick success and at Chester, decent prices, you know, it was probably the only time that, you know,
so you're a very popular man.
Yeah, this is easy, this sport, isn't it, you know, top tipster. And I think that's pretty much where the sort of bug got me. It was fantastic, you know, the winning, the excitement of being so close to the track, you know, great crowds at Chester, really great buzz. And I think it was pretty much from there that the early sort of involvement for me.
So no sort of experience of growing up with horses, it was purely the kind of buzz of race day, and that's what sort of triggered wanting to...
Yeah, I didn't grow up with horses at all, really. I mean, I did, if you look back, of sort of early exposure to racing. You know, I was young, my dad used to run a football team, a West Cheshire football team, and his mate would come and pick us up every Saturday, and we'd go. It was quite a successful club, but they had a working men's club, so they'd go and put the nets up and everything, and we'd go into the bar, and in the bar would be the telly in the corner with Dickie Davis on there, you know, and the racing was on
Showing
there.
your age now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Showing your
But
age.
Exposed to it from there, and then they'd come in and they'd have a pint just before the game kicked off, and we'd watch the racing. Or, you know, we wouldn't really watch it, but we'd see them watching it, and then later on they'd come back in to check the results, and we'd watch the football results and stuff. So that was probably the early sort of exposure to it from that point of view, but nothing as in sort of close up with horses. And then a little bit sort of later, sort of early teens, my dad then was, you know, a factory worker, and he used to take the betting work for all the blokes in work. So I was,
An official booking.
He'd come home and he'd be talking to me mum and stuff. So there was a bit of involvement, and he always had a stash of cash in his bag that we always used to help ourselves to, you know what I mean? So it was that really, but it was good.
And what about you, Bill?
Yeah.
You don't have to say how long ago it was.
Yeah, a long time ago. No, I think for me, similar to Mike, you know, I grew up around Chester. I grew up about 5 miles outside, so my early experience was going there about 12-ish, 11, 12. And back then, and this does show my age, it was 50p to get on the course in Chester, which we all wish it was now. But but it was 2 or 3 of us used to go down and watch the racing, and I loved it. I loved the whole drama of it, and you know, like Mike said, I seem to remember there was I think it was Rainbow Quest, maybe was one horse that ran there, and there was Belmez. I remember a horse called Belmez, I think it was. Anyway, just the whole drama of it, and I loved it, and also as Mike said, there was sort of Haydock a bit later on. So for me, there was no background in my family at all with horses in any way, shape or form, not even betting, quite frankly. It was purely going and getting the drama of it and loving it, and you know, certainly didn't think it would lead to where we are today, but yeah, that was from a very early age, really.
So I love that, and both of you have got specific horses whose name you remember a number of years on.
You know, which is unusual in the flat to some degree, isn't it? You know, but
compared to jumps.
I think the specialists at Chester sort of come to the fore, don't they, you know, and I think so sort of some significant horses that you remember,
definitely.
I think having now been at Chester a couple of times, it's such a unique track, isn't it, compared to what you see around the country.
Yeah.
So I can see how the kind of bug took hold that really for you.
Yeah.
So clearly you're in love with the sport, you're getting more interested,
Yeah.
you're going to get a bit more serious about it as well. So you start looking at ownership, which is obviously something very new to myself and Ben. What are some of those initial highlights or horses that you had in ownership, and some of the difficult parts as well? Good to hear about both sides.
Well, I suppose if I sort of start with that, for me, I sort of grew up here and then went off in university and went to London, seeking my fortune. This didn't happen, but there we go. And then I moved back here sort of a few years later, and a good friend of both of ours, Nick, sort of suggested, you know, why didn't you get involved in racehorse ownership? And I was like, well, I'm not sure why I haven't got the really money to do that,
right.
you know, because he'd been involved in it himself. But you know, he sort of said, why don't we go along? We knew somebody that knew Michael, who owns where we are today. So we came here and saw it, and really that's when I got first exposed to horse racing syndicates. And they ran one here. I mean, that's going back to 2011, maybe.
It's 4 by 10. I think
4
it
by
was,
10,
isn't it?
yeah.
4 by 10.
So where you have
just to touch on that, what's the 4 by 10?
The concept was to get a syndicate together, and the stables had been Tom had been to the sales with Ed Sackville,
right?
And they set 2 syndicates up at the time.
Yeah.
One was in an 8 by 8, so 8 people, 8 horses, X amount in. But that was a sort of a larger syndicate with a bit more of an initial lump sum up front.
Mm-hmm.
And then they set up a 4 by 10, which was 4 horses, predominantly cheap horses, you would say.
Yeah.
4 horses and 10 people. And there was a set amount which included the training fees and everything. It was an all-inclusive fee, and the hope was that really one of those horses, in both syndicates, both the 8 by 8 and the 4 by 10, one of them would hopefully do enough during the season to sort of pay its way and sort of pay towards the future needs.
And that's how we met,
right.
basically. I bought 10%, Mike did, and that's sort of where we started and got involved with syndicates and started really the sort of ownership, certainly for me, the ownership.
Yeah,
experience.
and were you quite surprised about how easy it was to get involved? Because I guess from an outsider's point of view, which is what we like to sort of dig under the skin of, you see, it seems quite inaccessible in a way to get involved in ownership, but affordability-wise, once you're in, it feels quite manageable, doesn't it?
I mean, there's plenty of syndicates out there that will get everyone involved. So we can make it very easily easy to get involved. Initially, it can be quite daunting, can't you? Because you know, as opposed to coming down to a place like this and wanting to buy a horse, you're coming down wanting to buy a share in a horse. So I think that's slightly different. My first involvement, just before the 4 by 10, was to have a smaller share. Again, I think it was a 12 share in a horse that was here with a chap who used to work for me, who had a bit of a touch on the lottery. And him and his mates won a couple of $100 grand, and he said to me the following week, do you fancy having a share in the horse? So I was like, I didn't really know anything about it, in respect of how to go about it, but we just ended up here, I think, because we got a bit of exposure. We're both Liverpool fans. Michael played for Liverpool, probably knew his association with the stable. Right. So it was a case of, well, that's the obvious place to start. Let's go there. So we bought a little share. It didn't perform too great, but it got the bug. Sure. The stable visits, you know, how fantastic this place is, and just wanted to keep your involvement. So when the 4 by 10 came about, that was perfect. It gave you a little bit more exposure, bigger. I did it on my own then, and it was great.
And we had a brilliant time, and I think, you know, what that set the scene for us. We met, got on well, and another friend of ours and another guy that was involved as well, Steve, and then off the back of that sort of started our journey. You know, we did the syndicate for a couple of years, and then the 4 of us went off and bought another horse.
Well, we had some great success.
We did have some good
ones. We had a horse named after your village, Martha.
Absolutely.
So we had Martha Missile, didn't we?
Yeah.
So the 4 horses in that, we had Martha Missile, was probably the most expensive. It probably cost about 10 grand. Not you know,
it would have been.
Another horse.
We had Winter Hill.
Who was the...
it was the best horse ever on the gallops here, but then when it got on the race
Just
course,
talking about
decided that she didn't want to be a race, wasn't there?
She did everything possible you could ever do to throw a race. I mean, she won once at Beverley. She did everything not to win. She fly jumped. I think it was just such a poor race. He had no choice but to win.
Yeah.
You know, and I think she was disappointed when she did that. I think she was really disappointed that she won.
And that's incredible. And the reason we're talking about that is we've just been out in the barns with our 5 horses and sort of seeing all the others, and you can see that they've each got, they're sort of very much their own personality.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how we got on to talking about how, the way they are at home translates onto the race course. And, kind of like you say, Mike, you think you know what you have, but until you get to the race course, you've really got no idea how it's going to pan out.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. I mean, it's I think, that's the beauty of it, because all the horses are amazing animals and thoroughbreds, but it's really the bit you can't buy is their mentality, and that's nobody can really understand that until the horse gets out there. But the reason why syndicates work really well, and we want to do it, is that you spread then your risk in horses and your enjoyment. So you've got in a lot of the cases, like in yourselves and a lot of the owners that we deal with, they might have a share in 2 or 3 horses, and then you've got lots of different fun, whether they're a filly or a colt, different distances, and that's where the fun element comes in, because you're spreading that enjoyment, and also with horses, who knows what they're going to do throughout the season.
It's also watching their development as well, isn't it? I mean, a really big part of being involved in our syndicates that we want to get across is it's not just about the track.
No.
To some degree, you've got no control of what happens when you go to the track. Windsor Hill being a perfect example. She went off absolute nailed on favourite for the first race because she worked so well at home.
Yeah.
And as I say, just happened to win one race once, but that was it. But it's just seeing that development, seeing them grow, not knowing what you've got, seeing them go into the track, but getting everyone involved in the stables, the stable tours. We get together here once, twice a month, don't we?
At least,
different people down.
At least,
because this is probably, for me personally, it's a better experience being here. It's completely different, but a better experience being here. You're getting to see different horses on the gallops, different quality. I mean, if you just look at the horses that have recently turned up, you've got the Barley Legend,
with Hugo Palmer having taken over.
It's phenomenal. So it just gives the place a massive buzz, and it gives us a massive buzz just to come down here and be associated in some respects with horses that you would never have a close association with at the level of the game that they're at. It's almost like the elite athletes are just across the barn.
It's the Premiership.
It's
a Premiership, and that's the beauty of it. And again, the beauty and why we came up with Roudee Racing the syndicates is that you're bringing, it's the closest any of us realistically get to professional sport and be part of it, and that's amazing. When you're out, as like Mike said, not only do you get the joy of seeing them train and understanding their development, which is a big part of horse racing that isn't really exposed as much as it should be, which means there's a huge amount of work that goes into getting these professional athletes at the horse wheel to a track. And then obviously what they do in the track is an absolute bonus, and just being there is great, never mind winning, which is even more amazing, and you guys have experienced the euphoria that gives you. But the joy of it is that we can be here and you can be here, and other owners, where the investment is in the world of horses relatively small compared to what some of these horses cost, but you're on the level playing field in terms of what's available to them and that exposure, and so that's just it's a privilege, really. And
I wanted to touch on that a little bit more. I'm going to go off piece now.
Yeah.
Guys, I've seen the questions already.
Oh, it's gone off piece.
That's
it.
Yeah. So get ready for it. But I think just to sort of, for those people listening that might be sort of thinking about syndicates as, how many participants are there? We have those sort of micro shares syndicates that, the likes of some of the, I forget the name of the one where they've had Grand National runs at Balco, they flow, and I think Alfred is over and sort of well known, particularly on the jumps and flat. But there are thousands and thousands of shares, and so everything you guys have just been talking about from an experience perspective, it is going to be diluted by the number of shares. Something that you guys have had at the core of Roudee Racing from the start, as I understand it, is keeping the syndicates to a size where you get much closer to everything that happens at the yard and the racecourse, and therefore the experience is a huge part of the value you get back. So tell us a bit more about sort of what that means for you guys and for the syndicate.
Our syndicate's kept to a maximum of 10.
Yeah.
10 shares, split equally, and everyone gets treated as the owner of the horse. You know, we have stable visits here, you know, Hugo will come up, Michael will come up, everyone's there together, everyone gets to know about the horses, how the horses are doing. It just makes it that much more personal, and also it makes it a better friendship group as well, doesn't it? Keeping it down to manageable levels. And also with the syndicates as well, we have quite clear start and end dates as well. You know, so our syndicates are crystal clear. You know, we're having a horse with a contract in place. This is the date the contract starts, and then this is the date the horse will go to the sales. So if that horse isn't performing, or if there's a syndicate, maybe that some people don't want to get out after the year and others don't, it's absolutely crystal clear the horse will go to the sales. So there's no chance of any sort of disagreements or anything like that. It just works.
We can vouch for that, can't we? Those contracts are some of the best clearest contracts I've ever seen. No grey areas with these guys.
You mean the detail round of the two of us?
Oh, okay.
If they're all right
on
by
tooth
you,
comb.
So that's Mike's role. Mike is that side. But no, it's important, right? And you know, we're very clear with anybody who wants to get involved, and I think, you know, part of what, you know, our aim is to get people involved who love going racing. You know, and more people love a day out of the races, you know, whether that's flat or jumps or whatever it may be. But maybe think, oh, you know, actually, or even considered ownership because they think it's one step too far or out of their league. And the reality is, you know, it isn't really. And as long as you are, you know, the way we say it, and I'm sure, you know, other syndicates as well, it's, you know, this is what you've got to be prepared to invest. And if you're prepared to invest that, and you see that as your hobby money, some people spend that on golf, some people spend it on whatever, then that's it, you know. So and anything else is a bonus. But as long as you are prepared to spend that, and one thing you will get, certainly with us, and I'm sure is a good time. You know, you enjoy it, and that's what it's about. It's about enjoying it, enjoying the experience, meeting different people, and you know, certainly mine and Mike's experience, and I'm sure the same for you. You meet people you would never normally meet in your normal day to day, because everybody's from different backgrounds in terms of what they do for a living, but they have a passion and a want to do this. So, you know, when we get owners here on a Saturday morning, nobody cares what people do. It doesn't matter. It's not even a conversation. It's all about looking forward to the horses. And part of the beauty of the syndicate is everybody's looking forward to it. So it's not just you on your own owning a horse going, oh, well, you know, why doesn't everybody else get excited? Because they don't own it. But if you own 10% or 20% of a horse with other people, suddenly you get this camaraderie, and that's the beauty of it. And that's really, I think, the key to a great syndicate, is having really good people who enjoy it, have a similar outlook, and just want to enjoy being part of it. And then it becomes, that's where the addiction starts.
Then it becomes not really just about the horse. No, it becomes about the social side of it. You know, you look forward to catching up with people in the syndicate. You know, we haven't seen each other for a long time. You know, you make so it becomes all encompassing, doesn't it? That racing brings everybody together. We all make great friends out of it, and we've got this focal point of hopefully this elite athlete that's going to take us to places that we could never. And hopefully winners in closures, certainly parade rings, like Ascot, you know, Chester, you know, just some phenomenal players.
Well, even you know, during sort of semi-lockdown last May, we were lucky enough to come to the May Festival as owners. First time me coming up to Chester, the warmth from Syndicate was overwhelming, wasn't it? Everybody was, you know, straight on looking after you. So it was wonderful to see. How about those owners of yours then? There's definitely a bit of a mix in there. Tell us a bit about some of the characters that are in the mix at the moment with
God,
you
the
guys.
characters. God, I don't think I'm going to name names. But I think, you know, obviously yourselves are involved. But you know, we've got again a real mix. You know, whether you're looking at from an age range. I'm not going to say people's ages, but you know that's a big thing, right? You know, you've got people who is maybe in their sort of slightly older years and younger. That's the beauty of it. But who cares? But I think the key and the mindset and youngsters, obviously.
Pointed at me when he said,
no, he looked at me.
No, exactly. And that's key, right? So it doesn't matter about age. It's if you're interested in it. That's key. Everybody enjoying it, and you know what we've certainly found. You know, currently we've got 5 horses that will soon grow, and what the beauty of it is that, you know, if we've got horses running at different tracks at different times of the week or different, you know, sometimes certain owners in some can't go. So actually, the beauty of this is, you know, those owners will be like, right, well, do you guys want the owners' badges for this, and vice versa. So there's a real camaraderie, and actually, as much as people might have different shares of different horses, actually we're all supporting Roudee Racing, you know, horses. So it doesn't really matter from that perspective, and that's a beautiful thing.
A great mix of work as well. And you
100%,
find that, you know, different people like me. I sat here on Saturday and listened to 2 of the syndicate members. One of them asking who knew someone who runs an agency who was exchanging numbers.
Right.
You may be able to get me some staff.
Yeah.
You know, I need some electricians and some plumbers. Can you sort that out? So there was phone calls being made. So it's that networking as well that brings everybody together. You know, and what we find in the syndicate really is when we bring them up here, we spend less and less. We initially introduce everybody. Everyone goes. And within a minute, okay, we have a few beers, a glass of champagne, and you know, so that
Which
helps.
Which really does.
But within minutes, everyone's just formed their own groups, and they've got so much, you know, in common, whether it be racing or business or you know, retirement, holidays, whatever. And it just becomes a great mix of people, different interests, but the whole basis is what we all do, which is racing.
Exactly.
You know.
There's so many different things that you guys have touched on there, and it's brilliant to hear you kind of elaborate on those things that, you know, I imagine some were at the sort of the core of what you wanted to start when you started the syndicate, and other things maybe you've seen develop that perhaps you weren't expecting. But, you know, I think that the point there is that being part of a syndicate is so much more than just watching your horse on race day. However, that is the one thing that we haven't touched on. You are obviously 1 year into Roudee Racing. 2021 was the first year you had horses in training. Yeah. Are you happy with how it went? Didn't do too badly, did it?
I wasn't too shabby. It was.
We got used to, you know,
You got too used to winning. Too used to winning. This is the thing.
So tell us who you had. Tell us who you had.
I think going firstly, the great thing for us was the name of the syndicate. You know, that was really important to us. Roudee Racing. I don't know whether you want to touch on.
Go on, tell us the heritage.
It's important.
We've got time.
Roudee Racing came from a horse that we owned between myself, Dylan. Again, this came from the 4x10. The 4 of us made friends. Never met before. Well, you and Nick were friends. But we got Nick Hughes, Steve Roberts, Dylan, and myself. We went from the 4x10 and owned a filly called Quator, who was lucky enough to win Lily Agnes at Chester for us, which was just
the best day.
That's May Festival.
That
was May Festival. First race on the Wednesday, May Festival. Amazing. It was a glorious day.
Channel 4, it was just ridiculous.
She'd raced, I think she'd raced at Lingfield first and finished down the field, but ran okay, and then went to Windsor and won at Windsor. So she was coming into Lily Agnes, drawn 5, I think she was.
Late 8. She was outside.
8.
Chester's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at Chester because the further out, because it's always on a turn, you want to be, in theory, always sort of first form, really. Yeah,
first, but we've had success from outside.
We have.
And she was drawn 8.
And just to touch on that, because that's an interesting point in itself. The importance of the draw is if you're drawn wide and you don't break well, you get stuck in behind horses, and then because it's a short run, right? It's
It is.
very hard.
If it's a
hard
sprint
horses.
race, and Chester's unique like that because it's always on the turn for those people who have never been. It's a bit like an American track. So, if you're not a good starter as a horse or as a jockey, then you're especially in sprint races, you're immediately at a disadvantage. So in sprint races, not so much the distance races, but certainly sprint, it's important. So we had this horse, Quator, that was actually, when we bought her, she was the cheapest horse available, I think, wasn't she? I believe.
She was the cheapest horse available. I don't think she was that cheap, but she was a filly that would be nowhere near it. She was by Kodiak.
Yeah.
So
back
65.
Back then, Kodiak cost $5,000 to breed.
And he's
Now he's 65.
So she was a Kodiak filly. She was only slight. She was everything we wanted, which was going to be a quick, early filly. Goes to Lily Agnes. We were just a bag of nerves when we went up into the stand to watch her, and she came around the corner. I'll never forget. She had there was a horse of Eric Holston's, Blythe Spirit, and
our nemesis.
Yeah, but he always had a great record at Chester.
He did,
so we turned around the corner, up the straight, and we must be Richard's going in front by about 3 or 4 lengths.
4.5 lengths, you mean?
And she won by 4.5 lengths. Yeah. And I'll never forget, we came down to the track, and I met Michael. Michael had come down, and they'd all been in the box.
Yeah.
And he said, as she came just towards the line, he said, box, I thought the balcony was going to go. It was rocking that box. The noise you made, it was phenomenal.
The most amazing day.
But we had a great season with Quator, and then really the prize money and the sales money that we got from Quator allowed us to reinvest. And we bought another Kodiak.
Thomas.
It was a bit more expensive this time. I think it cost us $42,000.
Something like that,
who turned into Roudee.
Which has a very special place in both your hearts, I think.
Roudee obviously is the name of Chester Racecourse, so it was a play on words as well, and it was out of the pedigree, so that worked. I think
Dan was on Rouge, wasn't it?
Oh, Rouge, so that's where the ROU came from,
the Dan.
River D. In Chester. So there was a lot of things there, and essentially that really cemented certainly my love of, and I'm always measuring horses against Roudee now because that's the best horse I've ever been involved with so far. That will change. I'm positive that's going to change, but I'm sure Mike's the same. And he was the sort of horse everybody really was in ownership once, other than having Group 1 winners, which realistically is there's only a few. You all want really a good Saturday handicap horse that takes you to all the really cool meetings. And he was that horse, and we just missed out on winning Lily Agnes again. He came second to a very good horse. But
you got beat by Lily's Angel?
No, it was
Muckmal.
Muckmal it was a Shadwell horse. But then after that we went to Royal Ascot and had a great, and he went again. He actually, ironically, just got beat by Cotai Glory, who's now the stallions who some of the horses we're involved with. But amazing year with him, and then he went on, and ultimately his biggest victory was the Air Silver Cup, and unfortunately
he won first time out as well, didn't he? He won the Racing Post yearling bonus as well, which was for us at Ripon. I don't know if you remember at the time, you used to get the yearling bonus, and you used to come in with this massive chest for £10,000.
Like you win a lottery.
It was like,
but it was fabulous.
So let's come back to Cotai Glory then, because I think there were 3 horses in the syndicate, right, in training last year.
Last year there was.
There was one who I think it's fair to say sort of flew the flag for the syndicate in its first year, which was our filly that we were all involved with, Devious Angel. It was by Cotai Glory. It was Cotai Glory's first season as a sire.
Yes.
I'm not sure. We certainly didn't know what to expect, but didn't expect what played out. I don't think even you guys in your wildest dreams have necessarily...
No, I think you'd managed our expectations pretty well.
Don't expect anything.
Yeah. But tell us what Devious Angel... Tell us about her as a horse, what you'd expected from her, and what she ended up doing last year.
She was very buzzy. We purchased her because she fitted the bill perfectly. If if there was any horse really that looked very similar to Quator, which is a horse that was her really well for us, it was hers. So we were looking early on as a syndicate to get our name out there, to get some winners on the board. You know, it was pointless for us buying sort of a filly that was going to add a bit of scope and was going to take a bit of time. We needed to get runners, and she just fitted the bill perfectly. And she delivered on everything that we wanted her to do. So very early on, from coming to the stables and getting the involvement with the staff, we knew she had a little bit of speed about her. We knew she was tough, and she was game. She was what you call buzzed up. Yeah. So she used to get on her toes, really quite excitable. But boy, was she tough when she went to the track. You know, she used to. She was amazing.
Everything you want in a racehorse, right? You want a racehorse. What you can't buy, which every trainer will tell you, you can buy pedigree, and you know you can spend anything from 10 grand on a horse to £1 million on a horse, and obviously that's based on breeding lines. But what you can't buy is a mentality, and you don't know that if a horse has got the mentality to want to win and lead the pack until you get them in training. And she was perfect for us because she fitted the bill from all the elements we needed for a syndicate horse, because we wanted obviously a horse, particularly in this case, to be hopefully a Chester horse, you know, not just Chester, but you know, in the other area. And she did that, and it was all that mentality. She might be small, but you know, you want to win. So we had, as you guys know, brilliant. She won 4 races. She went in about 3 different listed races, I think, and
she was never
didn't quite make the grade
up to that standard. But just the fact that you can run in, and that's the difference. That sometimes, you know, everyone thinks, you know, you've got to be ultra competitive every time you go to the races. But for us, sometimes just being involved in that type of race with the other horses that are in the race is just as good as winning. And with her, if we could have sat down really and wrote the script before, we probably would have reined ourselves in a little bit, wouldn't we? We'd have probably said, oh, come on, she can't win twice at Chester, so let's just put once down. And she's, you know, she couldn't win at Chester and Haydock, so let's maybe put she'd be played, but she won at Chester twice, she won at Haydock, she won at Southall. And I must add, in all that, she never paid her training fees with the prize money. So that's the problem that we could do in deep ground maybe going forward in future episodes.
Yeah, indeed. We had a bigger topic there for sure.
We had a third that won 4 times and never paid the training fees. But other than that, just absolutely fantastic. And then backed up really by the colts that we had as well. You know, I mean, because they ran with credit.
And they were always bought with this year in mind.
Yes, definitely so. Yeah, definitely so.
So let's move on to this year then. We could go into the nuts and bolts of all the races last year and Devious' wins, and that would take probably a few hours. But 2022 is shaping up to be an exciting year. You guys have 5 in training now, I think.
Yep.
Is that right? So kind of, what are your aspirations for this year? What would a successful 2022 look like?
All of them winning Group 1.
I mean, the early indication from the stables, visits that we've had, and seeing the glorious Angel, who is Devious Angel, sister's named Glorious Angel, seeing her at home. We're hopeful she can follow in her sister's footsteps. She's certainly got the early signs that she has that ability, she has that desire, and maybe she's a little bit bigger, so she might have a little bit of scope to maybe make those 6 furlong races that Devious wasn't quite able to do at the end. So she's certainly very exciting. We've got a US Navy flag filly, first season sire. Her name's Ibiza Love. She's doing quite well in the cards. We're hopeful that she's got a little bit of class to go with the what she's shown at home. So that again, you're looking at Glorious Angel. We're hopeful of getting her out and running at Beverley on the 13th of April. And then we'll see how she runs and see where we go from there. Ibiza Love, hopefully towards the end of April. She's not far behind. She's had a little bit of time off. Basically, she's rubbed her neck with a rub, but she can have a little bit of time off, but we're hopeful. And we're hopeful one of those fillies can take us to some decent races. We're certain that's the case. And then we've just purchased as well a Camacho filly, who's very nice, purchased direct from Hugo. He's very keen on it.
Still a few shares down.
There's still I don't. You know what? I think there's maybe only one now.
It might be only. It might be one to go. Get involved, guys.
I think she's big. She's big. Yeah, she's a big filly. She's got a bit of scope. You're looking at. She's just been transferred up from Newmarket in the last couple of weeks, so she's just trotting away on the gallops, and she's a big filly. So we're looking maybe towards the end of July, which fits brilliantly with the other two. There's a lot of people involved in all three syndicates.
And when you say that, so just to be clear, so the other two are what we would call more sort of early types. So they would be
more
running and ready to run early in the season. By the time you get to the second half of the season, the others, like the Camacho filly, might have started to catch up. So if you're involved in both, you kind of get a full season.
Exactly that. Because some horses will take to their work much better quickly. And also sometimes it depends on their size. If they're big horses, which is what Mike refers to as scope, then sometimes they need a bit more time to grow into their frame. So you have to, obviously that's where the expertise of Hugo and his staff come in. But then, the earlier types are maybe more in their frame and are ready to go. So, so that's the beauty, like I said, when you have maybe shares in 2 or 3, you have that sort of scope over the season to sort of see them at different types of races as well.
And again, spreading the risk. Spreading the risk, spreading the enjoyment. A few shares in different horses going to be out at different times. Different sort of races they're going to be aimed at, just gives you a real good mix. And then most people are involved as well with the couple of colts that we've got. So we've got a colt, there's a gelding actually now, both have had the gelding operations over the break. So we've got Lordman, who has been challenging the last couple of months. As Hugo says, he's taken to trying to train himself. Really, which hasn't been that helpful.
He was described in the WhatsApp group as the Paul Pogba.
He's a good looking. He's the most good looking. He's a beautiful looking.
He looks
so much talent
at the moment. He's got a real deep colour to his coat at the moment. He looks well, and Hugo's changed his regime since he's been here, and says he's really taken to it really well. He's starting to settle down a lot, and the hope is that we can sort of run him mid-April, and that he uses his enthusiasm he's showing at home, let's say, to try and get his head in front from the gates, and then maybe stay in front and see if he can hold on and nick a race, and then sort of see where we go with him. Really, he's going to sort of tell us what we do with him, where his mentality is, and as we say, hopefully he can settle down from what he's been showing.
And I think it's fair to say with him as well, he's going to probably be running more at the distance he was bred to run at, which is 2-year-olds. For those who don't know, they all start at 5 or 6 furlongs, so it's not till late in the season the horses that are maybe bred to be more milers or more miles can actually even have a race that's more distance. So he's relatively lightly raced, and hopefully he's going to be more like a mile type horse.
And then we've got to back up. We've got Rudimental, which has got a fantastic name.
We love that.
And he's hopefully got the ability to go with the name as well. I'm really hopeful that he's going to come into his own this year. He finished off well last year at Wolverhampton, finished strong second to Dark Swan Song, which is a horse of Clive Cox's, which was well touted at the time. So he's got some decent form lines. He's got some decent form lines for earlier in his race as well. So we're hopeful really he can build on his handicap mark of 74 and take us to hopefully emulate the great Roudee maybe, and take us to a nice Saturday handicap horse.
We hope he's going to be. He's definitely got that scope. I think if he could be that sort of Saturday handicapper for us, and we think he's nice. We'd be like,
there you go. Well, look, I think we're gonna wrap up, but certainly I think will be the whole sort of premise of the next few weeks and months is to follow the progress of these horses, both at home and on race days. So we'll be hearing plenty more from Dylan and Mike. We're also going to be talking to Hugo Palmer, who's the new head trainer at Manor House Stables, on a regular basis to get his view on how the horses are progressing and their targets for the season ahead. which we hope is going to be fascinating for all of you to follow. So I think it just sort of remains for us to say, Bruno, a massive thank you
Thanks, guys.
to Mike and Dylan.
Yeah,
I could have talked to you all day about
Can
this.
you come back?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Regularly.
Yeah.
And talk about our winners.
You can't lose us up, yeah. Hopefully, we'll get lots of winners this year.
Yeah, fantastic.
Brilliant
Boys,
chat.
really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you
Right,
very much.
all good.
Brilliant.
Well, a massive thank you again to Dylan and Mike for their time. Hopefully you all found that as insightful as we did. And just, I mean, Bruno, so much passion from both the guys about the sport and what they're building.
Yeah, really was. And just great to that we now know, but seemed far-fetched into Roudee Racing and syndicate ownership was the actual accessibility of being able to do that. So that's the point we want to kind of get across first and foremost, is that you can get involved quite easily, quite affordably, and there's lots of fun to be had as the chaps took us through their stories. It was great stuff.
Yeah, it really was. So thank you to everybody at Manor House for having us on Wednesday. It's a fantastic facility, beautiful place, and felt very lucky to be able to wander around and see all the horses and speak to different members of the team there. And it's an exciting place to be. I think there's definitely a buzz around the yard given Hugo's arrival and the arrival of some exciting horses. One of which, the Barbie Legend, is running in the Guineas in a month's time. So very exciting all round. So on to a very brief weekend preview. We wanted to keep this in episode 10, given that it's what everybody tunes in for every week. Our brilliant insight into the upcoming racing.
Our amazing tips as well.
Yes, the tongue is firmly in the cheek there, because our profits at £1 level stake is not looking particularly good, but that obviously can change, and it might well change this weekend.
As we regularly remind listeners, we are not a tipping podcast. I repeat, we're not a tipping podcast, but you can at least follow our attempts at tips and laugh at us when they don't come in.
Indeed. It's all a bit of fun. Well, just back something else. If nothing else, it serves as a way to narrow the field down. So I think we're going to pick up on a couple of races, and I think we've both narrowed it down to, apart from the race in which your tip comes, which we'll come to.
Yes.
But there's two races specifically that we both had looked at, and we're going to have a quick run through. That was the Scottish Champion Hurdle and the Scottish Grand National, that are both being held at Ayr tomorrow. Is that right?
That's right. That's where all my arrows are pointed this weekend. It's their big day, obviously. And should we start with the Scottish Champion? Go in chronological order at 225. Really competitive, this one. I was kind of, the shortest price is for who I think at that price is actually a cracking bet. So I like him in terms of the shorties that are there. But the last year's winner, Milkwood, reappears after a long layoff. And there's plenty of potential down the field as well, and a lot of younger horses coming through. Another one that I like at a bigger price, and the main reason why I was kind of heading in his direction was because of those words when we discussed Kelso a couple of weeks back around trainers and horses from the north of England and Scotland actually having kind of an over-indexing success rate at Kelso. So I've kind of stuck with that. I don't know if that's something that has much more history behind it, but so the one I like in this is Alkmaar, who is about 17-2, 9-1 shot for James Moffat, who's Cartmel based. So
what a place to be based.
I know, it's a stunning racecourse, isn't it? I've not actually been, but the pictures I've seen of it look very picturesque indeed.
I haven't been either, but I would say that I think if you do have a chance to go to a race day at Cartmel, I think you can be pretty sure it's going to be a cracking experience, because it's very unique.
For sure, and this horse has got a cracking record at Cartmel as well, but has also won at Ayr, and his form figures are pretty tasty as well. So, unseated last time out at Wetherby when going really well in a race that Tommy's Oscar featured in, coming second in that. A horse that has done, made massive improvement this season. That was back in October, so it's a little bit of a layoff that he's got to contend with, Alkmaar. But before that, his figures read 1, 1, 1, 1, 2 since February of last year. So, and one of those races was at Ayr, and he won by 16 lengths. So I think he could be really, really interesting. The yard's in cracking form. They've had one runner in the last 2 weeks, and it won. They've also got a £5 claimer on in Charlotte Jones. Her form, last 2 weeks, one runner, it won. I imagine it was the same horse, probably.
No,
but
probably is, but still, he'll take those numbers.
There you go, and that's my compelling case for Alkmaar.
Yes, well, it is a compelling one. Now, I went through all of the runners in this race and thought I could make a case for each of them. So I definitely see the Alkmaar angle. My feeling with it is it strikes me as a race where there's likely to be one or two that have kind of had this in mind, and then there's likely to be others that are coming here off the back of running very well in sort of big 2 mile handicap hurdles this season that might just I think whenever it's not a horse's actual target, I often just sort of think, is that where you want to go? Yeah. Particularly when it's a short price. So for that reason, I look at the number of times that One More for the Road has run this year. I think people I think he's too short. I can definitely see his credentials, and he 100% has a chance, but I think he's too short. I don't think Neil King's had a winner in 2 weeks either. West Cork was, as we all know, targeted for the county, ran an absolute blinder.
Yeah.
Through the mud, but he had a hard race and it was only 15 days ago. So he might well win, but again, he's too short. Milkwood, we know he likes good ground. He's got some cracking back form in the last 12 months, including in this race last year. But he's up in the weights, and he is one that it's quite hard to get away from with the love for Ayr. The one I've settled on anyway, rather than going through the case for each, those three at the top of the market are too short for me. So there's two I settled on actually: Barrichello and Voix de Rev.
Oh.
Now I'm kicking myself with Voix de Rev because he was available at 33 to 1 a couple of days ago, and Tom Midgley had already been jocked up. So I very nearly just went in and had a little nibble there. He is just one of these that's just lurking on a very good mark, given his classy back form. He ran very well on ground that would have been too soft for him at Kelso 2 runs ago. He then absolutely hacked up in an easier race at Newcastle last time. And that whole sort of Northern Yard thing that you mentioned ties in there.
Yeah.
So Lee Westwood's horse, Voix de Rev, is interesting. I think I might have I'll be absolutely devastated if I don't have a nibble and he hacks up. But the other one I like is Barrichello. For all the Formula One fans out there, he just has a lovely attitude. Form figures of 1-1-4-1-1. Donald McCain's yard. It's a fairly simple case. The McCain is in unreal form.
What's the season he's had?
All season. He doesn't seem to have dipped either. A lot of these trainers have peaks and troughs. So I really like his attitude as a horse. Particularly, he won a nice race earlier in the season where he kind of stole a margin turning in and then managed to hold horses off. I think that was at Haydock. But I watched his most recent win and he actually got headed after the second last, but then got back up to win quite comfortably. Nice. So I think attitude counts for a lot. When I'm backing a horse that has a good attitude, I can feel pretty good about it. So actually, I think Barrichello could well be an each way bet at 7 to 1, given that you've got a horse that has got a fantastic attitude. So you would hope you're going to get the true running. So yeah. But it's an open one. So Alkmaar for you, and main bet for me, and that would be Barrichello.
Rubens himself. Very good.
Indeed. Should we move on to the big race of
Let's
the
do the
day?
Nash.
Do it. So over to you. Where have you landed?
Look, it's a national trip. Which is, where is it? Are we just under 4 miles here? I think for this one. So plenty of runners in the mix, plenty of angles you could argue. I'm not really taken by much at the top of the market, so I'm searching down the list for ones at prices that I think have got half a chance. And the one that I like at the biggest price was One More Fleury for Ian Williams, Midlands-based trainer. Ran at Cheltenham not too long ago, so that would count against him. In the Korak Rambler race, of course. but ran okay,
Ran
ran to his credit, and then just was short of pace. So I think this extended trip will suit Ian Williams. Not in too bad form either in terms of his yard. Others that I like in here: History of Fashion, Pat Fay coming across from Ireland, seems to be offered pretty decent behind some very, very ideal trip of kind of 3.5 miles plus. So I like Major Dundee as well, which obviously catch all the headlines given the Scottish, who just seems to turn up and win big races on the flat, over hurdles, and in this case, hopefully maybe even over the larger obstacles over an extended trip. So I like Major Dundee as well, obviously in the colours of the late Trevor Hemmings, who has a long-standing affiliation with these kinds of races. So yeah, those are the three that caught my eye.
Yeah, nice. Well, he trains down in Barbary Castle, but he is obviously a proud Scot, Mr. Alan King. So, and it's well, as you say, that I find that incredible. I don't know that there are any other trainers that I can think of that have the success across not just both codes of racing, but the extremes of both codes.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's definitely got a history of having good staying chasers. I mean, not a chance winning the classic chase last year, for example, which can be a right old slog. And it's so anything Alan King trained in a race like this, and you would assume that this has been a target for him. He's only run 3 times this year, so
right.
Yeah, interesting one. So I've got 2 here. Win My Wings for Christian Williams, who very notably has got Rob James booked.
Okay.
So £7 is coming off, and I just thought I don't remember the last time I saw Rob James, apart from Cheltenham, come over and ride in the UK. So leading point-to-point rider in Ireland. People talk about his claim a lot, and generally the horses that he gets jocked up on shrink in price as a result. But that's why he's prolific in point-to-points. I thought that was very interesting. The other one I liked was Cool Mix. As more of an each way bet to that should run into a place off a low weight. And as a 10-year-old, maybe the improvement has stopped, but equally with these staying chasers, it doesn't necessarily
count against you, does it, all the time?
No, it doesn't. It certainly doesn't. So but the thing I wanted to flag with both Christian Williams horses was I read a very interesting article in the Racing Post this week about the way Christian trains his horses. Don't know whether you saw this, but it's about the surface that he trains on. So his operation is on the Welsh coast, Ogden. Some grass that he trains his horses on. He has some reason that he does such a good line in staying chases is apparently because he works them on the beach.
Right.
Which is how Red Rum used to be worked before the Grand National. And that is essentially mirrors very talking about all these sort of flat pedigree horses that he gets. He's had to buy them relatively cheaply because he's still sort of relatively early in his training career, and then he can turn them into these horses that improve for marathon trips. So if you get a chance, everyone listening to dig out that article, it's just fascinating. I don't know how many other trainers do that, but I would imagine it's probably not many. So Kitty's Light at the top of the market, 5-1, and Win My Wings, both Christian Williams, and both are very strong staying chasers. Kitty's Light, no 6-year-old I think has ever won the Scottish National, and the way Christian Williams talks about him in that interview, I just think there are going to be plenty more races for him as he gets older, not least the Grand National. Win My Wings is 9. She's in incredible form. She won the Ida very, very takingly, so I like her. But it's wide open. There's 24 runners, and it looks like the ground is going to be on the better side. There's been a little bit of rain in the air, but I think they're actually talking about possibly even putting a bit of water down just to keep it good to soft. So if you're playing in this race and ground is a factor for the horse that you like, then bear that in mind. Anything else to add before we go on to tips?
No, all good there. I've got my tip ready to go.
Good man. Well, fire away.
Yeah, it's Do Your Job in the 3 o'clock, which is the Future Champion Novices Chase, a Grade 2. probably one of the highest paying payouts on the card. Do Your Job for Michael Scudamore. He has run in behind the very best 2 mile chasers or 2 mile novice chasers this season. So 10 lengths second to Edward Stone back in December at Kempton. Also beaten by Third Time Lucky earlier on in the season as well. He's since stepped up to 2.5 miles, and that seems to have brought out a lot of improvement. It just seems to be that he got outpaced in those 2 races, having been competitive for a long way. So he stepped up last time out at Newcastle, won well, won cosily, as they say, over 2.5, beating some decent horses. So I think that is his trick. This is over 2.5 as well. It's really competitive. There's 5 horses that could all come out and win this. But I just like the profile of this Do Your Job, who also comes in here at the bottom of the weights in this kind of limited handicap situation we've got here. So Do Your Job for Michael Scudamore.
In the 3 o'clock at Ayr, is that right?
That's it.
Yeah, lovely. Good man. Yeah, lovely. Well, hopefully he does his job for you tomorrow. I'm going to stick with the horse I've mentioned, Win My Wings in the Scottish Grand National. I think it's rare to see a 9-year-old progressing the way she has this season. And the way she won the Ida, just travelled beautifully. I actually didn't watch the race, and I've watched it back a few times this week. Travelled beautifully, never really gave backers a moment's worry, and then nice sort of low slick jumper, and then kind of moved to the front and was more or less hands and heels after the last. So I just feel like she's a horse that's got a bit of improvement, and she gets to run off. She's only gone up, I think, £8 for the Ida win, and Rob James is taking 7 of that back off. And so if the sort of the net £1 rise is definitely not going to be enough to stop her. And the other thing I liked about this, because we have to take it back to Corach Rambler at every possible opportunity, is if you go back and you look at the classic chase, Eclair Surf, who was second to Win My Wings in the Ida, won that classic chase with Corach Rambler back in 4th, and Jericho Rock in 2nd, who finished second in the same race that Corach Rambler won at Cheltenham. So the form looks good. Win My Wings in the 3:35 for Christian Williams, the sand trainer himself.
Very good. Nice, I like that. I mean, the Rob James thing is potentially massive. I didn't notice that. So, very interesting one.
Yeah, good stuff. Nice weekend's racing. We're getting towards the end of the jumps. We've still got a month left, so we're going to milk it for all it's worth.
Of course we are.
Excellent. Well, look, at the end of a landmark episode for Talking Horses. Firstly, double figures, but more importantly, we had our first guests, and what guests they were. So I think it just remains for us to say, again, a huge thank you to Dylan and Mike. We'll be hearing plenty more from them in the weeks and months to come. We will also intend to speak to Hugo Palmer and get his insight about our horses for the season ahead, which should be brilliant. So check out future episodes. We hope to have him on very soon, and if possible, he's a busy man, but try and pin him down on a more regular basis to sort of take us through his thoughts on how the horses are developing through the season, how their targets are changing, how they're performing, etc., which should be really insightful, shouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be brilliant to follow that story, not only our horses, but also the kind of story behind Manor House, because it's obviously at a point where it's going to try and really step up its game and increase its operation massively, and Hugo's a big part of that. So to get that access will be amazing, won't it?
Indeed, we're very, very fortunate. So again, thank you to everyone that is allowing that to happen. Right, so remember, everybody, that you can access the pod through all your favourite podcast platforms. Please rate and even review if you're so inclined. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel for the video versions, which I would recommend you do, so you can see these wonderful Roudee Racing Talking Horses podcast tops that we've had made. Make sure to follow Talking Horses podcast, all one word, on Instagram for news about the podcast and plenty else from the racing world. And lastly, please do, as ever, leave us your questions on any of those platforms if you have something you would like us to tackle in future shows. Enjoy the racing this weekend, and of course, gamble responsibly. See you all next week.